Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. I am Kate Heald. I am the College and Career Navigator at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. I see that we also have Gail Evans on here, who is in that same position at Walter Johnson High School. And we are joined today by Jesse Monroe, who is the Director of Domestic Recruitment at the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at American University, right in our backyard. And I was recently at American and was surprised to learn that they are on the forefront of working with AI ethically in all things AI, all things university. So I was very pleased to find out that they would be available to host this today. So thank you so much, Jesse. I am going to turn off my audio and camera, and it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here. It's always great to get to work with the schools that are right here in our backyard, and I know we do a lot specifically with BCC. So always a pleasure to take some time to get to connect. As mentioned, AU is definitely an institution that was one of the earlier adopters of AI and wanting to empower our students, but also to teach them how to use it ethically and responsibly. It's something that, colleges know AI tools exist and that students are going to encounter them. So it's important for us to kind of to connect and to help you understand what it means to use these things and how they can be a tool, but also keeping in mind that ethical and responsible piece to this. So I guess I'll start before we jump into the AI of it all, just by sharing something that I think is really important to keep at the center of the college search process, and that's the thing that matters the most to college admissions offices around the country, and that's authenticity. So kind of thinking about what we're about to talk about, AI is a tool, but you are the applicant. ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, these AI bots are not applying to college. You are. We're not looking to admit them. Your unique perspectives and your lived experiences, those are the things we're looking for that are going to enrich our campuses. So um, keep that in mind throughout this presentation and as we talk about ways to use it, that this whole process should be student-centered. The other thing I think is important to lead with is that some colleges and universities have specific policies around AI, and admissions offices typically will follow those guidelines when reviewing applications. So expectations can vary by institution. So it's important that you should always review the college and university's policies around AI if you are going to be engaging with it in any way during this process. Your own school may have a policy around AI, so that's something to consider as well. I'll put, let me see, in the chat here, just as an example, what the AI kind of policy is around AI use. And you'll see we list out very specifically for staff, for faculty and classroom piece, but also for our students and what the expectations are. So really important information to kind of have as you think about AI in this process, knowing that colleges and universities are, for the most part, in the admissions office, going to be adhering to those guidelines and principles as well. So though AI products have really only been accessible to the public for maybe 2 to 3 years now, we already know AI is shaping how students are approaching their college search. So our role is not necessarily to restrict it, but as I mentioned in the beginning, to guide students toward ethical and meaningful use. Because when used well, AI can genuinely sort of level the playing field in the college search process. We know in a school setting, resources vary. Some students are at very large public schools where counselors have pretty big caseloads or maybe reduced resources related to specifically the college search process and college counseling. We know some families pay for independent counselors. And they're going to be doing some of the things, they're going to be paying, independent college counselor to do some of the things that we're going to talk about here today that AI could do for free. As I think about it, it is something that really can level the playing field across backgrounds, across resources, and across different types of schools if you look at it through that lens. But I want to underscore that it's really meant to support student thinking, not replace it. The ethical line, I think, is pretty clear. And if you're going to use AI, and you don't have to use it, but if you're going to, I kind of think about it in these three buckets here. So you can use it to inform yourself in this process, and we'll talk about what each of these means. You can use it for reflection, and brainstorming, and then using it to get organized. But it's not here to help misrepresent you in any way or sort of outsource your voice in this process. So those are the things we're going to talk about here today. So thinking about inform, we're going to talk about research and discovery and building college lists. We'll talk about the reflection piece and using it to brainstorm ideas through this process and how you might want to tell your personal story through your college application. We'll talk about the organization piece, how you might be able to utilize AI tools to get organized in this process, because there is a lot of moving parts that go into this and multiple deadlines and lots of things to juggle. So you can almost use it sort of as a project manager, which we'll talk about. And then we'll talk about some pretty blatant no-nos, and what we don't want you to do, and that will be pretty glaring to admissions offices and will stand out. So we'll start kind of with the research and discovery, the informing piece. I think this is probably one of the most practical uses as you think about AI in the college search process. And that's for the search itself. AI can really help you start with generating a list of colleges based on interests you have, the location, the size, majors you might be interested in, campus vibes. I think about it more specifically as surfacing lesser known schools that might fit specific criteria. This can expand your options beyond kind of just traditional rankings or popular schools kind of within your specific school group that you're kind of typically hearing about or students are heading to. So really just expanding your search, broadening your list. This helps you really focus on schools that are actually a good fit based on the information that you're sharing. It can be helpful in comparing different programs. I think about it in some ways almost as a great tool that you continue building on and also kind of use as kind of like a Google in that explaining differences between degrees, majors, or even just various terms or acronyms that you hear college admissions offices use. So it can definitely be something that can help you build on your lists. That said, I'll always kind of reinforce it's going to put out information, which I'll give you an example on the next slide, but you should always be verifying some of the information on official college websites. So it can simplify the process, but it should never be the final source of truth. So once you build that list based off of the things that you input, it's important that you're going to the college websites and actually doing the research to dig a little bit further. And one of the things I really like about specifically ChatGPT and some of these examples is you can see kind of a link to where they're pulling some of this information from, which I think is really, really important. So first example here, kind of building off of that list building piece. I have a prompt here that I put into ChatGPT just last night. So I, as a student, know that I want mid-sized schools in the Northeast with strong political science programs. I want to do internships. And I'm really looking for a collaborative academic environment, not something that's, very cutthroat. So I took that kind of simple prompt, and this is what ChatGPT specifically gave me. So I will say we're not feeding AI to get our name listed first here, but it is ironic that it did pop up first. But you can see here the first thing it gave me was kind of the excellent matches that kind of most directly pop out based off of those few criteria here. Then the next thing it did is it gave me a list of other schools worth exploring that kind of fit within that. But then what I really like about it is it'll ask follow-up questions. So we don't want to just stop there because those aren't the only things you're probably going to make a decision based on. So thinking about the type of school, are you looking for a small liberal arts college or do you want a larger research university? Thinking about proximity to a larger metro area. Mid-size is pretty subjective. It could be 3,000, it could be upwards of 12 to 15,000. So there's a pretty big range there. How important are merit scholarships to you? Would you just look at schools in one particular area? Are you truly open to that geographic area that you list there? So I think AI platforms, this one specifically, ChatGPT that I use, they can kind of start with a list, but then also continue to help you further refine it based off of your interests. And, as you research the schools it suggests, you can actually kind of go back to the threads because it all saves, and you can say, oh, this is what I really liked about this school, or you suggested this school, and I kind of through research found I actually don't like this type of school or this type of environment. And so it can kind of continue building and getting a stronger idea of what you're looking for and kind of continue to make suggestions as you work through that process of building your list. Maybe you're overwhelmed and even knowing where to start with a college list. That's pretty common. A lot of students don't really know quite yet exactly what they're looking for. Some do, and that's great. That's a great example of kind of the last search, but AI can really be helpful in helping you where to even begin. There's nearly 6,000 colleges and universities here in the US alone, and so it can feel overwhelming sometimes to really know beyond maybe your local flagships or, again, going back to the schools that you're kind of more constantly hearing about. So AI can really guide a reflection by asking structured questions about preferences. So thinking even as basic as like, do you want to be in an urban environment or a rural environment? Are you looking for a big school, a small school? Um, Helping you weigh trade-offs. So cost versus prestige, distance versus being a little bit more independent. And really just kind of helping you turn more vague thoughts into clear priorities. And I think kind of going back to kind of broadening your reach, I think this is one of the most valuable uses in really helping students make intentional choices rather than just defaulting to maybe brand names or, again, just kind of thinking of the things that are kind of constantly in front of you or all over TikTok, which I know is now a big source of information that students are getting related to their college search process. So similar to the last slide, I did the same thing here. Put this prompt into ChatGPT. I'm not sure what I'm looking for in a college or university. Can you help me get started with building a list of potential schools to consider? So I dropped that exact prompt in there, and so you can kind of see where it started over here on the left. Um, the first thing it really did was just help you kind of narrow down the focus of what you should be considering as a baseline, right? Academics, are there specific majors you're interested in? Are you looking for a school that is really flexible because you're unsure of what you want to study? Thinking again, going back to size, to location, the vibes on campus, those are important. Financial aid considerations, that's very important for most families in kind of building a list, thinking about what merit scholarships are important. Do the schools give need-based financial aid? The learning environment itself. So then based off of the answers to these questions, it will be able to kind of continue building on your lists, your priorities. Um, if you truly have no preference, it will kind of just give you examples of different schools. So like a small liberal arts college, you can see Gettysburg, AU, mid-sized private. So um, at the end of the day, the goal here would be for AI to provide a clearer profile of like what you might like. So say we go through this and it helps you narrow it down to that. Okay, based on your responses, you actually might prefer a mid-sized university, with a suburban campus that has strong advising and internship access. And if that sounds great to you, you could be like, yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And then from there, it would be able to make recommendations for specific colleges and universities for you to consider looking at. So the hope here is that this would be a tool that could help you kind of turn that feeling of overwhelm into a starting direction as you're building your college list. All right, moving on to brainstorming. So this is the reflection piece that I mentioned. Notice how on the slide I put brainstorming, not writing. We don't want AI to do the writing for us. So AI can help you find your story, but it shouldn't tell it for you. So the college essay, I mean, truly is one of the few places in the college application where students get to speak directly to admissions committees in your own specific voice. You get to tell us your story. And so this is a space where you're going to be providing, additional context beyond grades, beyond test scores, your resume. It helps us understand how you think, how you reflect, what you care about, overcoming challenges. The essay itself isn't necessarily about writing perfectly, but it is about being perfectly yourself and telling your story. So that's why I said not writing in that particular slide. So that's not to say AI can't be a helpful tool in navigating your personal statement or your extra supplemental essays that you're doing. So ways I think it can be helpful in the writing parts of your application, generating essay prompts. It can help you with brainstorming topic ideas based on student experiences or meaningful moments in your life. Going back to the beginning, there's a very clear ethical line here, right? Of how you don't want to use AI as it relates to brainstorming and writing essays. You should not be submitting any essays or, bodies of writing that were written by AI, and that you're submitting as your own ideas or thought. Um, in the same regard, if you're using it to have it review structure or grammar, you want to make sure from the output of that you're not copying language that you did not meaningfully shape. So you can ask it like, does this make sense? Or things like that, but you don't want them to rewrite what you wrote and then copy and paste that and place that in directly into your Common App. Another thing that kind of popped up in my head as I was thinking about this, that students have tried to use AI for, but it does backfire, is translating an essay that's been written in another language via AI. So writing it in another language, dumping it into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you translate this to English? Just the same as any of your foreign language classes, we know these online translators do not work as directly as they seem, right? So that would also be something that I would say would also sort of cross the line as it relates to this. And I can definitely tell you now that we've gone through a few years of AI being available to students, admissions offices can tell when you've used AI to write an essay or a supplement. Dead giveaways for AI when we think about writing, robotic flow, repetitive phrases, generic or vague content, very formulaic structure you kind of find is very common. They lack personal voice, going back to authenticity. Sometimes they have like oddly perfect grammar that doesn't always line up with other parts of writing or maybe necessarily grades we're seeing in an English class. So again, going back to the beginning of what we're looking for in an essay, we want to learn about you. Does it need to be well written? Sure, but it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, right? We're looking for that authenticity there, and the context, the content is more so what we're focused on there. So in addition to just like being completely unethical, using AI to write your essay defeats the purpose. We really want that authenticity. We want to understand you better, whether it's an experience, a passion, a meaningful story. None of those can authentically be conveyed by a chat GPT, by a Claude, by a Gemini. It needs to be your authentic voice. So what does that look like in practice? So, kind of going back to the idea of brainstorming, I put this specific prompt into ChatGPT. I worked at my family's restaurant and helped translate for customers. What could I write my college essay about? Pretty basic, just to get started. So, once I put that in there, the first thing I think AI can really do is help you identify meaningful themes. So, from the experience or whatever the topic is you put in there, kind of meaningful themes might come from something like that. So, responsibility, identity, communication. It can help you reflect on personal growth. Uh, it will a lot of times ask deeper questions. So you can see kind of the themes that were listed here, they're trying to dig to, but on the right, you'll see here questions to help you brainstorm. So ask some more questions. What was that experience like? What are you most proud about? What was difficult? Were there specific experiences that stick out? What did you learn? So really asking a little bit more questions to help you brainstorm and be reflective. It can also help you think about, different angles and how you might want to do that. Again, going back, was there a moment? Was there a challenge or like a realization that you came to through that? So I think those follow-up questions that it can ask you, even if you have a pretty strong idea of what you want to write about, can really help you better understand your experience. But also, again, you see through this, like the authenticity is still even acknowledged by ChatGPT. So there's a note on college essays here that where ChatGPT also says, like, remember, this is supposed to be about you. They're looking, college admissions offices are looking for authenticity. So, through the prompts that you enter and the questions that ChatGPT can ask, you can use this to thoughtfully reflect and kind of think about, again, how you want to tell your story to admissions committees to the schools that you're applying to. And this can fit with your personal statement, which Common App Coalition, you get 5 topics, 4 are pretty guided, one's very open-ended. So there's so many things you could write your college essay about. I think sometimes, so going back to the overwhelm piece, there are students who just are like, I don't like, where do I start? I don't know. I've got 17 years of life to reflect on and think about what I want to share with these committees. So I think it can be a really helpful place to start to brainstorm, to really think about what you want to convey to admissions offices through your personal statement or through your supplemental essays as well, which are going to, typically have pretty pointed topics for you to write from. And then the last piece of this puzzle as we think about organize. So there are many moving parts of this process, like I mentioned, especially if you're applying to multiple schools, which I think the average student applies to like 10 plus schools these days, which is a lot. And so you'll find through your college research that schools have different deadlines. They'll have different application deadlines, but they'll also sometimes have different financial aid deadlines. Some schools are going to have special program deadlines that are also separate. For example, our early action deadline here at AU is November 1st, but all of our special program deadlines, including the one to our honors program, happen in December. So trying to keep track of all of these different deadlines and things to remember, it can come at you fast. There's a lot of them. It's a lot to keep up with. In addition to the varying deadlines, I mean, you'll learn about the different requirements. There's schools that are test required, test optional, test free. Some have supplemental essays that are required, some are optional. Is there a separate application required for merit scholarship consideration? So I like to think about AI specifically as kind of like a lightweight project manager. And this is it's definitely, I can say in my professional life, one of the ways I use it, to help me keep organized of all the things that I have going on. So another example here, I think this is my last one, of kind of different ways you can use it to stay organized in this process. I took this prompt here on the screen. I'm applying to AU, GW, Georgetown, Howard, and the University of Maryland. Help me build a timeline of admissions deadlines, average admitted student statistics, testing requirements, and if the school considers demonstrated interest as part of their review process. So some pretty basic information to start. And this was the first thing that came out. So it built me this nice little chart here. I mentioned earlier, sometimes it'll link where they get, where they're pulling some of this data from. So you can kind of see this came from the Big Futures College Board website. Has everything I asked for here, the various deadlines for early decision, early action, and regular. I have my admitted student profile here, their testing policy, and then whether or not demonstrated interest is considered as part of their process. This is something you can export. You can have them put into an Excel sheet for you. You can turn it into a graphic. But you can also continue building on it. So the next thing it did was put it in a month by month kind of timeline of when you should be pacing these things out throughout the summer and throughout the fall. And then even through that, it suggested other ways it can continue to help you build this out. So maybe monthly doesn't work for you. Maybe you need a weekly checklist of things that you should be working on. I mentioned you can turn things into spreadsheets. You can turn them into kind of graphics. I know a lot of students trying to keep track of their college search and the schools they're interested in already create spreadsheets where they're kind of building this information out. So if you had it build a spreadsheet for you. You can go in and add notes about your visit to those schools or other, important factors you've determined along the way. But you can kind of keep everything in one place. So notes from your visit, these stats that were on the last slide here, you can actually have it like remind you, of when certain things need to be done. Once you have applied and gotten in, it can help you really compare financial aid award letters. It'll guide you. You're going to be doing the one doing this, but it can also help kind of you think about pros and cons if you're really stuck between schools. So there's so many different ways from a project management standpoint. You could really utilize this to stay organized in the process. I love a spreadsheet personally. My life lives in a spreadsheet, but some people need more visual, kind of graphic representation. So it can create images and kind of flowcharts for you. On the kind of first slide here that I had, this was just like I was like, if you could build it, what would that look like? So this is actually, if I had given them real schools, it could have put that information in more of a visual kind of representation for me. So the project management piece, I think, can't be underscored enough if saying organize is something that you would need assistance with during this process, which is most people, like I said, just knowing how many various deadlines and moving pieces there are to the process. And then we're rounding it out with the big no-nos when using AI. Going back to the beginning, you really have to think about AI as a guide or as an assistant, not a substitute for that, for effort, or authenticity. Again, AI is the tool, you are the applicant. The best use of AI in a college search is to really help you be more informed, more reflective, and more organized, not more artificial. Please use your brain. I put this little graphic on here for you. But it's true. It's really important that your personality and your perspectives, your story really isn't dampened through use of AI. I am someone I've worked in college admissions for 16 years now. I really firmly believe that the college search process itself offers students a really valuable opportunity to learn more about themselves through this process. There's a potential for kind of personal development, self-awareness. You learn a lot about yourself through this process, the things that you value and that are important to you. I think through this process, students are kind of encountered with a bit of vulnerability that comes with putting down stories, your skills, your qualities, your interests, and really getting the chance to be seen for all those things that the qualities that you have, but also the things that you believe, your values and your morals. I think there's a lot of freedom through this process in that you're given the chance to tell your story. And I think that's the autonomy in that and getting to share what you want about yourself is really important. Other things that come to mind when I think about this process, the strength of storytelling skills, emotional intelligence, and then I think about, more philosophical, the beauty of starting over, right? There's just so much to this process that I think is really incredible for young people to get to experience. And so I think sometimes the stress of all of this, there can be for some people, they feel like they need to use it. Going through this process, I'm not saying you have to use AI to do any of these things, but I do think it can help guide you through this process. Um, at the end of the day, we don't want this process to feel transactional, and I think sometimes the stress of it all can make it feel that way. But we really want to make sure at the forefront of this process, it truly can be transformational. So if you're choosing to engage with AI in this process, we want to make sure that you're really letting your authentic self still shine through, because ultimately that's what's most important to us in this process, and is bringing students that we think authentically will be a really great fit for our colleges and our communities. So don't let usage of AI, and there's examples up here of ghostwriting applications, fabricating your activities, replacing personal judgment, things like that. Truly let your story come through this process if you choose to use AI as a guide. And that's all I have. I don't know if I can stop sharing my screen. If there are specific questions
Um,
that you have on anything.
so here's one, Jesse, I have in the chat. Is it okay for AI to help reword my own words to fit descriptions into the character limit on the Common App, like the honors descriptions where we only have 100 words? Is it 100 words or 100 characters? I can't remember. 100 characters. Yeah, there it
It's
is.
probably 100 words. Yeah,
No,
100
it's
characters, pretty
characters.
short.
It's 100
But
characters.
honestly, some of these supplements wouldn't run it by them to not make it that short. I think it's a slippery slope. Like I mentioned, I think sometimes when you put it in there and you let them rewrite it, it can change the context, it can change the tone a bit. I think it would be appropriate to put it in there and ask for suggestions on things you might be able to shorten or, you know, what pieces stand out are more valuable, that sort of thing. But I think it's a slippery slope to let it rewrite and condense your work because then you are copying and pasting it and putting it in as your own authentic work, and it is not. So I think there are ways you can ask it questions on how to condense it, but I would hesitate to let it rewrite and shorten it for you. I think that does kind of cross the line from my perspective.
Thank you. Can you say, oops, wait a minute, just went away, another question. Can you say something about how students should protect personal data and privacy when using AI tools?
Yeah, I mean that's a big piece, right? Anything you're putting into the system, unless you have the paid advanced fancy version, which most people aren't doing, you are putting that out into the ether. And so that is something to be cognizant of. We don't know where that information lives or how it's being looked at or viewed. So I think there is a consideration there about putting, what personally you want to share with AI. I think about that, like we're very cognizant of that on our end of like I don't put anything related to student information in there. Like I use it for, again, I stay very organized with it. That's more of how I'm using it. I think from person to person though that varies on like what you're comfortable sharing with it, but it is something to consider. Like if you're sharing something deeply personal, that does live in the ether with whatever, chat bot you're using. So be cognizant of that. I think awareness of what different AI platforms are doing with that data is always important. But yeah, there's like no rules against it, but I think it's a personal kind of thing to consider is if there are students who write deeply personal essays. I mean, you don't have to, but there are students who share some very profound stories and impactful things, some very traumatic, but others that are just like very meaningful and personal. And I could see how some students wouldn't want that to be shared
Mhm.
in a chat bot, and that's okay. Like again, you don't have to use it for all of these ways. These are just suggestions of how you could use it.
Thank you. All right, this question is what I was just going to ask. So great minds think alike. Do colleges feed applications through AI to evaluate them?
That's a great question. That is going to vary by institution. I know there are schools that do.
Hmm.
I know there are schools that don't. I know there are times where we come across an essay and we have a pretty good thought in our mind that it's again lacks authenticity. There's no real like personality to it. That I have definitely like run it through one personally just to get a sense of like, hey, do you think this might have been? And I'll say with that, like I do pay for the fancier version of AI for that, but I can say that there are schools that maybe sometimes do. So that's going to vary by school. I think if schools are doing it, like I said, they're using it in an ethical way, no personal information is being shared. But that's really going to vary by school, and I don't even know how open schools would be about that. But I know that I've through conferences and just through colleagues I have in the field, I know there are some schools that do dump them through all of them just to make sure. I can say at AU we do not. We like to believe that students wouldn't, use it to completely write essays, but to the point I said earlier about there are very, very clear indicators. And typically when that's being done, there's other kind of things in an application that might kind of match that red flag, right? Whether it's like sometimes you'll get they did that for the personal statement, but then we have the writing and the supplement, and they like very much don't match, right? Like there's some things like that. So not a clear answer because it's just going to vary by institution, but it is something to consider, like that schools are doing it, and that should again sway you from using AI to write your essays. But in no way do I think those readers are 100% accurate. So I also would say take that with a grain of salt that if schools are doing it, I don't think they would be incorrectly accusing students of using it, and I don't think schools would be 100% relying on that type of AI piece. It's I think for some schools it probably just helps a little bit, but I don't think it's swaying decisions is what I'll say. But typically when I've had like very blatant no effort AI essays, the rest of the application and as a school that does a very thorough holistic review, that wasn't the thing that maybe got a student waitlisted or even we weren't able to offer admission at all, right? But tip in my kind of what was I said 2, 3 years now students have had access to this. I've not had that be the one thing that I'm like, oh, absolutely not, right? There's usually the holistic component that kind of goes along with that. But don't use it to write your essay.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So I tell you, I mean, I've already talked to kids about using it to help make their list, but I love
Mhm.
the idea of give me a spreadsheet with all of
Yeah.
these schools and the test scores and,
Hmm.
all the data, because, usually I pull it from a bunch of different places. So I do hope
Hmm.
kids will utilize that because I think that's a great use of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably the most practical of all of this, right? Because like I said there's 6,000 colleges and universities, and there is, for some students, they know it's their dream to go to wherever, or, these 5 schools are very popular within a school group, and that's great, but we should be encouraged to like there is so much out there and we don't know what we don't know. And I think like I thought I was gonna go to the University of Florida because I was a Florida resident and that was my flagship and that was all anybody at my school went to. But then I mean I didn't have AI or even Google whenever I went to school, but like I kind of broadened my horizons in my research and ended up at a very small women's college in North Carolina. So different. But without the proper, resources or tools, like I would have never even considered that. So I think about it in that way of just being able to open your eyes to something that like could really be a great fit beyond maybe the same kind of 5 brands or reputations, right, that you think of. And whether or not you go on to apply to those schools isn't necessarily in the conversation, but in building that initial list of students that or of colleges that you want to research and explore and really get to know more intimately, I think it's an incredible tool.
Thank you. In your experience, how accurate is the data provided by AI about college admission statistics?
I mean, I don't use it a ton just because I don't, oh, we don't often compare ourselves to others. And if we do, it's through kind of, groups or conferences. So the data share is a little bit more direct. In my experience in general, like I use it to pull data in other ways. I mean, I don't know that I could put a percentage on it, but it's always worth verifying. But I find for the most part, it's fairly accurate. I mean, like the information that I pulled, that was pulled from College Board. So those are stats that might be a year delayed, but for the most part, they're pretty spot on, right? They're pulling like seeing it pulled directly from College Board was pretty exciting for me to see because that's a pretty reputable, and that's why too I like that they have started linking some of the sources. It's not always there, but you do see it more and more now. And I think even just to be able to directly click on it from there and be able to verify, it's gotten a lot easier versus in the past that wasn't as kind of in your face and you did have to dig a little bit more. But I think as long as it's pulling from reputable sources, and not like college admissions, like independent blogs, you
So
know.
you could probably tell it where to pull it from. So if I went in and I said, please pull the data
Mhm.
from niche, college
Yeah,
board,
yeah,
et
guide it that
cetera,
way. Yeah.
you could do it that way
Absolutely.
as well.
Exactly, yeah. And then some of it's pulling from our websites, and that's on us if it's out of date on our website. That's,
Right.
we can't blame anybody but ourselves for that. But yeah, I mean, using any of those kind of mainstream trusted
Mhm.
sources, and I think that's a great point of just like how specific you can be,
Yes.
is what I really, you can be as vague or as specific and just kind of keep the conversation going. As I was kind of working on the prompts for this, I've had like the same tab. And so anytime I've been thinking about this more, I've gone back to that same tab and I like keep digging a little further. I'm like, well, what would so I
Yeah.
think being able to revisit some of that too is nice. And if you weren't sure where that source was, you can always go back and find that conversation. Because again, it lives there in perpetuity.
Thank you. That's all I see in the chat. Are there any other questions? Either for the chat or you can come off mute, up to you. All right. Well,
Yeah,
as I said at the
great.
beginning, I have recorded this, and I will share it with all of the schools, all 25 high schools.
Okay.
And if
Oh,
you
great.
have, yep, it goes around. Jesse, thank you so much. You're always such a wealth of information. Oops, I'm going to turn off the recording. You're always